right, guys. So here are my answers to your interview questions. Thank you so much for letting me submit them in video form because it's a lot easier for me. Okay, so question number one. When did your interest in pornography originate? At what moment did you decide to start producing and directing erotic films? So I'm someone who kind of ended up in this industry not necessarily intentionally, just sort of on a lark. I was working in mainstream marketing and communication, and I grew up, as a young professional at the beginning of the internet. So I was specializing in e-commerce and online marketing, and I was recruited to join an adult company called Gamma Entertainment, which is still the company I'm with to this day. And at the time, it was just after the big financial collapse in 2008. And I thought, well, I'm open-minded and adult seems pretty recession-proof. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a chance. I totally said yes to not really knowing the world that I was going to get myself into. And I say that, without wanting to paint an ill picture of the adult industry. In fact, I really knew nothing. I didn't have sort of preconceived notions. I didn't think it was a horrible, awful place, and I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't necessarily think it was like a super big professional space either. I had no idea. I was super naive. And my only knowledge of adult prior to starting to work in adult was your brother's magazines underneath, his mattress, and, what you could rent at the back of a video store when you came of age is kind of a joke, and what was on scrambled pay-per-view late at night. So I did not have I didn't have extensive access to adult content. I really knew nothing about the production of it. But, I was really interested from very early on in working in the adult space with understanding how you could use pornography to connect with people's desires, especially people who are willing to subscribe to a membership site to get content. Because when I started working in porn in 2008, that was right around the introduction of free tube sites like Pornhub and YouPorn. And, there was a huge shift in access to adult content, but not necessarily people paying for adult content. So I was really interested in, and have been since, in like the whole professional side of the adult business, and, what motivates people to not only watch porn, but also to subscribe for it. So that was where my sort of interest originally stemmed from, purely kind of an evil marketer perspective. When I decided to start producing and directing was also very much an organic journey. It wasn't something that when I started working in adult, I ever would have assumed that I would end up working in adult production. Like I mentioned, I come from the marketing and communication world. So for the first 5 years I worked in adult, I was, sitting in an office, looking at my computer, looking at a lot of, other content created by different brands and performers that our company partnered with. And learning a lot about the spectrum of adult content and porn, and again, what motivated people to not just watch porn, but to subscribe to their favorite porn. So at a certain point in our company's history, we decided that rather than having our business be, entirely focused on partnerships with existing brands and studios, that we ourselves would start to try to build our own studios and to acquire studios and start to own more of our own intellectual property. At that time, I was working very closely with our president. I was looking for a new challenge. I naively raised my hand and said, like, hey, I love film, and I'm organized, and I'm a good writer, and I would love to take this on. And that was like throwing myself head first into the world of adult production. And I worked again from behind a desk for about the first year to year and a half, working with producers to bring ideas to life. And as I got to know more and more about the production process, I became more interested in learning and starting to do more of it myself. And I was brought in by a number of producers who were really open to sharing their knowledge with me and their experience with me, and giving me a space on their sets to come in and start like working with actors, or learning more of the behind the scenes technical aspects of production. And I found that I absolutely loved it. And I particularly loved working with actors, and I loved taking the passion that I have for my projects and having that be infectious, having other people get really inspired and interested in, working with me. And that flow state that I was able to achieve with this group of people was really what motivated me to like learn more and more and take on more and more space, and eventually start, writing, directing, and producing full time. All right. What was my first experience filming an erotic film like? So I was working with, some producers out in LA, and was very much, behind the scenes. I would send script ideas and, kind of look at the numbers with them and be there kind of to be kind of like the corporate partner to them in terms of what they were making. And every year there's a big convention in Las Vegas called the AVNs. And for a good number of years, everybody would descend upon Vegas during this expo. And oftentimes people would shoot content while they were out there because kind of everybody was there. And so it was on one of those trips where one of the producers that I was working with was shooting, a handful of scenes during that week. I was going to be in Vegas because of the expo, so they invited me to come and see the set. It was the first time I had ever been on an adult set. I was very, very nervous. I did not want anybody to think that I was, I just wanted to seem so like polite and professional as I could. I didn't want anybody, to think I was like leering at them, or I was so nervous. I kind of like walked in like this. And that day, the crew was sort of equally nervous because, it was the first time they were meeting me in person. And it was the first time like I was coming to their set, and they were also kind of an up and coming group of people. And so unbeknownst to each of us, we were all nervous. And when I got there, all of the gear started randomly, not working. And so, like a light would die all of a sudden, or like a battery wouldn't charge, or like all these things, these sort of like technical issues started happening all throughout that day. And we joked for, years afterwards that it was because, that was like the effect of me being on set. So I would say like the first experience was nerve-wracking, but kind of, it was funny because we broke the ice in a comedic fashion because everything went wrong. What do castings consist of, and at what point do you decide that a certain person can film or not? So we, at Adult Time, we almost entirely work with performers who are already established within the studio or professional production side of our industry. So we don't recruit amateurs. We, aren't looking for people's first scenes. We're very, very much looking to work with people who are professional and have some experience under their belt, and are of course there for the right reasons, and that's the vibe that we go for. So there's a network of performers who are either with an established agency that we work with who represents them, or they're independent talent, but they're self-representing and have a good track record within the industry and a good track record working with us. That's usually the community that we focus all of our castings upon. Like I said, we don't do amateur castings or first time castings. We certainly don't go try to actively recruit people. And it's really we have different opportunities. We do not do go-sees, so we don't do you may have heard of those, like kind of like auditions. If we are going to meet somebody for the first time, we always like to do that in a professional set environment. So for example, if someone were to reach out to us really, really wanting to work for us, we may elect to choose them as a non-sex cameo role, very sort of small role in an upcoming production, because that allows us to meet them, to see them work and see their work ethic, obviously to get a chance to get to know each other. But it's all done in the spirit of an existing project, and they have a role to play. And, it's kind of the best way to get a sense if our types of productions are a good fit for them and if they're a good fit for our productions. So we will, typically do that as a first way to meet somebody. Or, it's a case of, the right time and the right project. So we base our castings very much around the projects. We have a whole bunch of different, series and brands and one-off projects that we produce at Adult Time. And so we'll look at what projects do we have? What are the casting needs of those characters? And then based on that, we'll go out and we have a database, so we'll go through our database and we'll, kind of identify potential targets to book via ourselves or, one of our established producers that we work with. So it can definitely be sometimes someone's first booking. Everybody has a first booking with us, but I think the spirit is that we don't do go-sees or auditions. We always do casting, cast people for roles as a first way to work with them. And the best path is to reach out to us to get on our database for future consideration. What is the most fun thing about working in an erotic film production company? Well, I think for me, it's especially Adult Time. We're really a company that is built on the spirit of marrying creativity with insights and recommendations that we pull from our data. So Adult Time itself is a streaming platform. It's an all-inclusive streaming platform. So we offer all kinds of different content for a wide variety of different audience segments. And that gives us a lot of insight into, within each of those segments, what they like and what they don't like. And we kind of leverage those insights to inspire and influence our creativity. But we've always been a super, kind of forward-thinking, creatively driven company in terms of our writing, our producers and directors, and our editors as well, which are a key part of our arsenal. So, while the data, you could read between the tea leaves and the data is good. I definitely drive with the creativity. And I think that creative spark is the most fun thing about working for our company. It's allowed us to be pretty groundbreaking over the years in different ways. It also gives people who want to work with us, I think, the confidence to approach us with ideas. We can't greenlight everything, but we certainly can take on more unique projects because we do have the benefit of a larger, more flexible platform to release them on. So it's fun to be creative. What do you think of the so-called short professional life of girls compared to the longer working span life of male actors? I don't know if, I'll say I think that might be a bit of an outdated concept at this point. I think overall, in terms of, just the population of performers, there is a much higher population of female performers who are coming into the industry than there are male performers. So by just nature of the differences in volume, you're going to see, a larger number of female performers that, come in, recognize that it's not for them, or it's only them for a short time and move on with their lives. But for, in terms of anybody who comes into our industry, it's not an industry for everybody. And it's not something that you should enter into lightly. It is a commitment. It is a professional occupation as well. It's not like a party or, like a flash in the pan. So, for the people that really do want to treat this as a career and take it seriously, there are opportunities, especially in today's day and age, for female identifying performers to have good careers from when they come in, through however long they want to stay. There's an age, a body type, a niche for everybody. And certainly with male performers, it's actually, I would think, a bit harder to stick around than it is for, a good female performer, because it's the type of occupation where, if you're a male performer, you can't fake anything. It's, like there is a sort of, there's a genuine physicality to it that must happen as a baseline for, your performance to be effective. And, it's so there's also a lot more scrutiny, a lot more rides on the day. Oftentimes producers are wary of taking on a lesser experienced male performer, because again, if the physical functions don't all work, then it can oftentimes be quite a lot of risk. So I think the reason why there's a smaller group of performers who make up the majority of the scenes that you see is because they've been able to prove themselves, and are just that reliability and dependability, and also that their co-stars enjoy working with them too. That's a much harder kind of ceiling to break for a male performer. So I think there might be fewer, and it might seem that they're longer, but I think it's really much harder to get into the male performer pool than anything else. What are your authorial traits when you watch a Bree Mills movie? What will you find? It's For me, I think I do the best when I also approach my work as a filmmaker in a very I treat it as as a living, breathing organism. What I'm interested in now is going to lead me to what I'm interested in the future. And there's not, I try to go with the flow and go with my instincts as they evolve over time. And I like giving into the journey of being creative. So, I've tried a lot of different things over the years. But I think, if you were to boil down the three, the three genres that I find resonate the most with my fans is, serious, sad, and shocking. So I'm not really very funny. I'm not a very funny filmmaker. So I've done some comedies, but I think overall I am more motivated and interested in sort of serious, thought-provoking, and transgressive subject matter. So I tend to gravitate towards that tone. And I think because it's not as often that you see that tone in adult as compared to some more of the kind of lighter fare. So that has helped me to stand out to a degree. By delving into serious subject matter, and by that being kind of what drives me, oftentimes that subject matter isn't always happy or lighthearted. And I think that sex and sexuality, I really believe sex and sexuality are fascinating subjects. They're also really complicated subjects, and they're not always pleasurable on the surface. So I don't like to only focus on one aspect of sexuality exploration. I like to really look at it holistically, and I can be drawn to looking at how it can be explored as a way of sort of healing and sort of psyche deep diving. So sometimes the stuff is sad, sometimes people cry, and I just do find that more interesting to work in as a sort of a tone and a subject. And I have always been a bit of a shit disturber, so I do like to put things in people's faces, in terms of subjects, in terms of images, in terms of moments that they're never going to forget. So I'm definitely I definitely do like, there's a certain element of shock to the work that I do, and have always done. And I think the most successful stuff that I've done has been stuff that has gotten under people's skin, and does make them think. But whenever I go a bit too far, like whenever it gets shocking for shocking's sake, like if I ever get to the point where the work, it's not just the work that is shocking and makes people think, but I'm trying to make it, then I find I've gone too far. So there's that kind of balance of letting something resonate with people in a way that might make them a little uncomfortable, but like it sticks with them, then kind of trying to be like a shock jock that way. So, but I think people do, they're going to go into my movie expecting that they're probably never going to forget it. And I like that. That's a good compliment. Who is porn cinema directed to according to your experience? So like I said from the beginning of this interview, I was originally kind of interested in the adult space because I was fascinated by the consumption behaviors of people who not only watched, but people who were willing to buy into their porn. Because of the fact that porn has become a commodity product in many ways due to its like super easy access online. I think I really I'm definitely someone who believes that it's important to target the content we make for adult consumers, not mass market anybody who stumbles upon it on the internet. I really love having my content behind a paywall, especially the content that is not safe for work, that is explicit, because I want to motivate adults to want to subscribe to watch the content. And that's who my content is directed at. But because I'm a lousy pornographer, I always call myself that. Like, I love making films. And again, I think sex and sexuality are really important subject matters. And those don't necessarily, that subject matter or like aspects of that filmmaking don't all have to be buried and exist behind a paywall. There's certain things that I always make our versions of my films because I think they should stand on their own as films for anybody who wants to watch them, and anybody who wants to, any targeted adults who want to come behind the paywall to watch the explicit content, can do that and be motivated to do that through subscribing to our platform. So I like being able to try to tackle like the broader, more, general subjects of sex and sexuality, but really focus and target the adult content itself to adults who give a shit about their porn, who are willing to pay for their porn, and who want to come in and watch a high quality version of it on our website in a legitimate way. What limits do you impose when filming? Well, I think my general approach is one, I am very specific about who I cast for my own projects. I almost always write projects with people specifically in mind for characters. And I do not write dialogue scripts. I write story treatments, and then I work with those actors to develop the actual dialogue on set together. So I have to be very specific about who I work with. And I like to write characters that are kind of in certain ways mirrors of who I've picked to play them, because I feel like it will deliver a more kind of compelling and realistic performance in the end. So that's always like that. That's something that's a part of my process. I work with a small number of crews who are all equally passionate filmmakers. And over the years, a lot of performers I've worked with who've grown to become quite accomplished directors behind the scenes will still get together and work on projects. And I love that feeling, that kind of camaraderie that comes from having a troupe. I did a lot of theater growing up, and that was my favorite thing, getting this to work really hard with this group of people, all equally passionate for a period of time, and make this piece of art together. I love that, and that's how I try to run my sets when I'm directing, and who I choose to work with as co-producers and crews. Porn Done Differently is our mantra at Adult Time, and that's to really hold ourselves to a very high standard when it comes to ethics and professionalism on how we run our sets. We do not shoot any piece of explicit content without everybody sitting down for a consent meeting where we really go over everybody's do's and don'ts and make sure that we stick within the do's, and that everybody's got kind of clear understanding, and there's a clear communication running throughout the day about anything, anything to do with the day. So that's a big part of the limits that I impose. I like to keep things organized as well. So, you're going to get on set with me, and you know that the story and the character has thought in it and was most likely written for you. You're going to be working with a group of really impassioned professionals who are really aiming to ensure the day is fun, but also like, conducted in a very professional manner, and that it's going to be, an efficient day. So over the years, I have had the fortune of having, time as a luxury. Not every producer in our industry does. It's something that I kind of insist on. If I want us to do a good job and it's going to take us this amount of time, I'm not going to try to squeeze it in. I try to be respectful of everybody's time. And it's going to lead to a better product. What is my favorite story that I've filmed and why? Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, it's funny. I started making content in the lesbian genre. That was where I started. I've actually since made content for pretty much every main kind of like sexual orientation or gender preference. So I've made gay content with trans folk, lots of straight content, lots of content that's for lesbian porn fans. But when I think about my like favorites, they do all tend to go back to the lesbian genre, which is the genre I started in. Teenage Lesbian, which was a biopic that I made actually about my coming out experience in 2019. That's a really special one. I think that's probably the best piece of work that I've ever done as a whole. A series called Girl Core, which was a vignette series that was kind of a love letter to the 1980s and lesbian pulp fiction. That one, speaking of time, had the luxury to really like focus in on those episodes, and I feel they're representative of some of my best work. And there was a series that I also started called True Lesbian, which was a vignette series inspired by like realistic depictions of lesbian sexuality, apart from sometimes some of the more kind of male gaze tropey depictions of lesbian sexuality, and that one as well. There's a few early episodes of that series that I feel really just I love and adore, and I think are some of my best cinematic work. Lastly, I don't think I would be anywhere without the development of the Pure Taboo studio. That's, still kind of arguably the most successful studio that I have show run. And it really kind of was the catalyst for everything that I've done in my career since. And that was, me really leaning into the serious, sad, and shocking to full effect. But it's also, where I learned the most about filmmaking. So that one's like really special. That's a whole brand, and especially that first kind of year worth of production are really important to me because I learned so much during that time. What directors or films would you recommend to those who are interested in erotic cinema? Well, right now there's a lot of really, like within the adult space, there's a lot of really interesting filmmakers that are working. So it's a good time to tune in and see what's being done. You've got Erica Lust, who's a real pioneer in the industry and Lust cinema. Casey Calvert, who is someone I've worked very closely with, award-winning director, and she brings a real unique vision to her films and the way that she captures sexuality. Susie Q and Michael Vegas are another directing duo who I've worked very closely with over the years, who are not only one of the main crews that I work with when I'm directing, but also have made some incredible art on their own as well, and have a very unique kind of view on capturing sexuality, which is quite interesting, and very sort of sexually fluid. I think Caden Cross from Vixen Media Group, is an amazing filmmaker and has done some really, really cool shit over the years. I like seeing what's coming out of Wicked Pictures as well, which is, it's a plug. It's a really well-known studio that my parent company acquired a few years ago, but just like amazing stuff coming out from that team and all its directors, bringing kind of a good breath of fresh air into that iconic brand. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, I'm probably missing some names, but yeah, plenty of stuff within the adult space that's very cool, very worth checking out. Ricky Greenwood, obviously, he's sort of won all the things the last few years, and has done some really cool stuff for adult time. But he's a real filmmaker, he's kind of like me, where he didn't come from inside the business, but kind of came into it with full force. Um, and does great stuff. So, I always take a lot of inspiration from outside the industry. So when I'm looking even at like influences for erotica, a lot of the stuff that's coming out in modern horror, I find super inspiring right now, like especially companies like A24 and Neon. So yeah, I would check out their work too. Um, which the sex business has always been seen as something murky from the outside. What is your opinion on this? A lot of It's a real shame, because like I said, when I started in this business, I had no understanding of what porn was, apart from, maybe thinking it was like, guys in trench coats and back alleys, like kind of a typical, assuming that it's very seedy and that it must be very corrupt and very exploitative. The reality is that, it's a pretty small community of really hardworking people who all kind of want to lift each other up and to just make stuff together and to survive and thrive together. Honestly, um, we're often like kind of call ourselves the island of misfit toys, but it's some of the most compassionate, intelligent, savvy people I've ever met have been in this industry. And it's such a shame that that porn, the P word, has such a negative connotation on it, where it completely, people hear that and they kind of completely forget the notion that there's people involved in making this content, right? Like everybody watches porn, whether you admit it or not. You've likely watched it or know somebody that's watched it, but so few people take a time to like recognize, oh, there's people that are actually like really working hard to make this, right? Like they think that it's very easy. They think that, it's you show up, you fuck, and then you party, right? And it's not. We're doing everything that our mainstream counterparts in television and film and commercial production are doing. We're just doing it at like a fraction of the budget, with all of the stigma and getting deplatformed anytime somebody catches wind of us, right? So I wish people would understand that it if you just looked at it objectively and looked at the people involved in it, that it would maybe change your perspective about the content itself. And also, like, look at there's so much sex in all kinds of mainstream media. I've been rewatching Game of Thrones with my wife because she'd never seen it. I mean, that's like a full-on porno. And like they're doing stuff in there that makes me blush, right? So like it's just a kind of a horrible double standard. Um, what celebrities would I like to direct in a porn production? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you what, I do like working with people that I know. Because like I said, I secretly write characters based on people. And in that respect, I don't really know very many celebrities. So I don't think I would be in a good position to answer. Where do I see the future of the adult business from a technological perspective? Certainly, the development of AI over the coming years is going to be a game changer on one hand. I think in many ways it's going to be a great amplification of the creative talent that's working in our industry. So you can use it as a tool, and it's a very effective tool. I use AI regularly to help me with my pre-production tasks, and even developing some story ideas. So it's good in that sense, in sort of like supporting and amplifying human beings who are creative. There's obviously the whole generative side of AI, which is a much more of a black box, and certainly something that has a lot of possibilities, but also a lot of like risks and liabilities associated with it. So I think navigating that evolution is going to be interesting for our industry. I think as long as the human beings behind the chatbots or behind the the generative images and videos are able to maintain that element of kind of creative direction and creative control and identity, as well as ownership over that any digital likeness or any generative creations. I think that's going to be kind of the key to navigating, and that speaks for all of entertainment, all of media, right? It's not just limited to adult. I think the other thing that certainly from a technological, but also from like a socio-political aspect is going to impact the industry in the coming years, are just rethinks around access and distribution of online content. We're seeing many age verification laws go into place across the United States and across the world. I think we're 25 years into being a online first planet, civilization, society, certainly Western society. And so, there's a certain amount of reflection and adjustments regarding how to access content, certain kinds of content, certainly adult content that is happening and is going to continue to shape and evolve. And, certainly there's going to be a lot of tech involved in terms of like overseeing that evolution in terms of access. What would be my advice to young talents who want to start in the industry? Okay, so I think it's the best possible time to get into this industry, honestly. There are many ways. Everybody should take their time to really vet whether being an adult performer is the right decision for you, not just for your present tense, but for your future as well. And there's many opportunities to do that. There are content platforms where you can create your own content, and you can learn about how to be a independent content creator, both in terms of the production of it, but also in terms of the legalities of it and the administrative side of it and the customer interaction side of it, and the whether you want to work just with yourself or whether you want to work with somebody else. It's the best possible education in terms of whether this business and this profession is right for you. Definitely making sure that you always stick to your own boundaries and your own timeline. You don't let anybody pressure you. You don't let anybody tell you have to do things a certain way. Having a clear understanding of your own self, even if that's going to kind of evolve as you explore and try things, but being in the driver's seat for that is really, really important. And making your own content is really the best way to get an understanding and a confidence in that. And then, making sure that there's lots of opportunities to network in our industry. But making sure that, you meet with the right organizations and the right support groups. And you kind of surround yourself with like kind of good peers and mentors in the space, as opposed to, those that might not be so positive. That's another really important thing to do. And there's lots of, XBiz, AVN, to organizations that hold regular events. The FSC, the Free Speech Coalition, they're also holding regular events. Pineapple Support, which is a great nonprofit organization providing access to therapy and mental health resources. So there's I would kind of get to know those organizations. You're going to be able to meet good folks from within those organizations to help you on your way. Okay. I think that's about it, guys. I hope I didn't talk everyone's ear off too much. And thank you so much for listening to me and including me in this piece.
FCK.FM.